Human creates prototype visor for blind alien girl. Days later, he was arrested. Ethan Cole hunched over a workbench, his calloused hands coaxing life from a stubborn servo arm. Dust motes danced in the dim light of his workshop on Nexara, a rugged border planet orbiting twin suns. The binary stars cast relentless heat across the rocky plains outside, but inside, Ethan found solace. A former Earth soldier, he had traded interstellar battlefields for this cluttered sanctuary, where salvaged tech and glowing tools shielded him from memories of war. Each repaired circuit felt like a small victory, a way to mend what conflict had broken. The workshop hummed with quiet energy, wires spilled across benches, and faint sparks flickered from half-finished projects. Ethan tightened a bolt, his focus narrowing to the task. This place, with its chaotic order, grounded him. No orders from commanders, no screams of combat. Just the steady rhythm of creation. A soft creak broke his thoughts. The door eased open, and Arya slipped inside, her pale blue skin catching the glow of the overhead lamps. The 7-year-old Nerevian girl moved with practiced stealth, her violet hair swaying in a loose ponytail. Her curiosity, relentless as the suns outside, always drew her to Ethan's repairs. She edged closer, eyes wide with wonder. "What's that one do, Ethan?" Her voice was soft but eager, pointing to a sleek drone frame on the bench. Its polished surface reflected the workshop's flickering light. Ethan glanced up, his gruff tones softening at her presence. Scout drone. Maps terrain, dodges trouble. He traced a circuit with a scarred finger, showing her the wiring. These carry power to their sensors, keeps it sharp. Arya leaned in, her reflection shimmering on the drone's casing. She nodded, absorbing every word, and Ethan felt a faint smile tug at his lips. Her enthusiasm chipped away at the walls he'd built. Their bond grew through quiet moments. Arya lingered during his work, passing tools with care. Once, as Ethan wrestled with a jammed bolt, he muttered a curse under his breath. Arya giggled, handing him a wrench. "This one's your favorite. Try it." Her laughter lightened the air, and Ethan's guarded heart eased. She reminded him of why he'd left the military. Not for glory, but for moments like this, where innocence outshone strategy. Day by day, she became a fixture, her small hands steady as she helped with simple tasks. Then a rumor swept through the local commnet, sharp and urgent. An accident at the Silver Cloud monolith, a towering relic on Nexara's northern plains. 3 kilometers high, its ancient structure pulsed with raw, untraceable energy, a mystery from a lost era. Arya, ever adventurous, had wandered its base, drawn to its strange hum. An unexpected surge erupted, catching her in its grasp. Ethan's comlink crackled with her screams. His chest tightened. Dropping his tools, he roared across the plains on his hoverbike, dust trailing in his wake. The medbay was a blur of white suits and beeping monitors. Arya lay on a gurney, her violet eyes dulled, staring at nothing. A doctor scanned her, his voice grim. "Optic nerves are gone. The surge burned them out." Ethan stood frozen, her empty gaze searing into him. He clenched his fists, a vow forming in the silence. "I'll fix this." His words were barely a whisper, but they carried the weight of a soldier's promise. Back in the workshop, Ethan worked without rest. Sketches lined the walls, scribbled with calculations. He designed the Visor, a headpiece to bypass Arya's ruined nerves. Tiny nodes would translate heat, sound, and electromagnetic fields into neural signals, crafting a new kind of sight. Components piled high as he soldered through the nights. The binary stars rose and set outside, unnoticed. At last, the prototype hummed, its sleek frame ready. Ethan adjusted its straps, his hands steady from years of field repairs under pressure. Arya returned, guided by a medbot's gentle beeps. She perched on the bench, her small frame tense. "Will it hurt?" Ethan knelt, meeting her unseeing eyes. "Just like a hat, kid. Easy." He fitted the visor, its nodes glowing faintly. A soft whir filled the air as it powered on. Arya's face tightened, then broke into a radiant smile. I see you. Your outline, warm and strong. Her fingers brushed his arm, tentative but sure. The workshop unfolded in her mind as patterns of heat and sound. Tools pulsed, benches glowed. Ethan watched, a quiet warmth spreading through him. Her darkened world flickered back to life, reshaped by his invention. They tested the visor for days. Arya navigated the workshop, first cautious, then bold. She dodged crates, identified tools by their heat signatures. Ethan fine-tuned the settings, logging each adjustment with military precision. Better now. Arya nodded, her steps sure. It's clearer every time. Outside, Nexara's winds howled across the plains, but inside progress reigned. Ethan thought of his old unit, saving lives with tech in the chaos of war. This was different. One girl, one device, yet it mattered more than any mission. One afternoon, Arya paused, her voice soft. Thanks, Ethan, for not giving up. He ruffled her hair, deflecting. Couldn't let you miss my junk pile. Their laughter echoed, sealing a bond forged in trust and ingenuity. The visor's hum became their rhythm, a quiet promise of hope. The workshop's quiet hum broke with a sharp knock. Ethan looked up from the Luma visor's calibration, his soldier's instincts prickling. A figure stood in the doorway, cloaked in silver-trimmed fabric that clashed with the workshop's dust. Steward Roland, butler of House Valebright, stepped inside, his sharp eyes scanning the cluttered benches. His polished boots clicked on the metal floor, out of place among the scattered tools. Ethan set down his scanner, wiping his hands. Arya, perched nearby, tilted her head, the visor catching Roland's heat signature. Roland's voice cut through the air, precise and cold. Ethan Cole, you've broken the law of sight binding. He gestured to Arya, who stiffened. Sensory tech for Nerevians disrupts their sacred biology. You'll answer for this. Ethan's jaw tightened. The law, a noble decree, guarded Nerevian traditions, but he saw only a child's restored hope. I gave her a chance to see, he said, voice low but firm. Roland's gaze didn't waver. You'll explain that to House Valebright. Come. The journey to the estate was swift, a sleek transport cutting through Nexara's rocky plains. Arya clutched Ethan's hand, her visor humming softly. The estate emerged under the twin suns, a complex of crystalline spires that shimmered like liquid light. Towers rose, catching the sun's glow, their beauty stark against the barren landscape. Ethan felt the weight of his patched jacket, a soldier's relic, as they passed through gates flanked by guards. The soldiers' whispers followed them, their voices low with curiosity. Was this human a savior or a lawbreaker? Their doubt hung in the air, sharp as a blade. Inside the grand chamber loomed, its walls carved with Nerevian runes that pulsed faintly. Archon Cassian Vale stood at its center, his presence commanding. Tall and broad, his silver robes flowed like water, but his eyes held a stern edge. Ethan stood before him, Arya close by his side. Cassian's voice boomed, echoing off the crystal. You tampered with a Nerevian senses. Why? Ethan met his gaze, unyielding. I gave a child her world back, not a weapon. His words, blunt from years in the field, carried a soldier's honesty. Arya stepped forward, her small frame steady. The visor translated the chamber's energy into patterns, guiding her. She climbed the steps to the dais, each movement precise. The council, seated in tiered rows, fell silent. Their murmurs of skepticism faded as Arya reached the top, turning to face them. Her confidence, a child's defiance against doubt, shifted the room's air. Ethan watched, pride flickering in his chest. She was proof his work wasn't a crime. Lady Seraphine Vale stood near Cassian, her silver hair catching the light. Her violet eyes, so like Arya's, shimmered with tears. She approached Ethan, her voice soft but clear. You gave my daughter her light. Her gratitude carried a widow's weight, raw and unguarded. Ethan nodded, words failing him. Her presence, graceful yet grounded, stirred something he hadn't felt in years. Cassian's stern gaze softened. Just enough. You'll stay for the ceremony honoring your invention, he declared. The council murmured agreement, their earlier doubts replaced by cautious respect. Ethan exhaled, tension easing from his shoulders. A ceremony meant scrutiny, but it also meant Arya's triumph would be seen. He glanced at her, the visor glowing faintly. She smiled, sensing his outline through its signals. As the chamber emptied, Seraphine lingered. She led Ethan to a quiet alcove, its walls etched with star charts. Her voice lowered, sharing her grief. Arya's father fell victim to a rival house's schemes. I feared I'd lose her, too. Ethan listened, his own losses surfacing. War had taken his squad, his purpose. Their shared pain wove a fragile thread between them. She's tough, Ethan said, glancing at Arya, who explored the alcove's edges with the visor. Like her mother. Seraphine's smile was faint but warm, a spark of trust forming. Roland appeared, his expression unreadable. Prepare for the ceremony, he said, his tone clipped. Ethan caught a flicker of disdain in the steward's eyes, a shadow that didn't sit right. He nodded, keeping his thoughts guarded. Arya tugged his sleeve, her voice bright. Will it be big, Ethan? He chuckled, masking his unease. Biggest party you've ever seen, kid. The estate's halls buzzed with activity as they left the chamber. Servants polished crystal panels, their movements swift under Roland's watchful gaze. Ethan's mind churned. The law of sight binding, Cassian's authority, Seraphine's gratitude, all pieces of a larger puzzle. He glanced at Arya, her steps sure despite the unfamiliar ground. The visor was her strength, his gift to her. But Roland's accusation lingered, a warning of challenges ahead. Ethan squared his shoulders, his soldier's resolve hardening. Whatever came next, he'd face it for her. The crystalline halls of House Valebright gleamed, their opulence pressing on Ethan like a weight. A stern Nerevian tutor, clad in robes that shimmered like starlight, stood before him, her voice clipped as she corrected his stance. Chin up, human, shoulders square. Ethan adjusted, feeling like a recruit under drill. The etiquette lessons graded, each rule a reminder of his outsider status. His patched jacket and scarred hands belonged in a workshop, not this polished world. Yet he endured for Arya's sake, his resolve anchored by her trust. Arya sat nearby, perched on a cushioned bench, her giggles echoing as Ethan fumbled with a ceremonial robe. The heavy fabric, woven with silver threads, tangled around his broad frame. You look like a shiny crate, she teased, her luma visor now sleek, crown-like, its nodes pulsing faintly. Ethan shot her a mock glare, then chuckled. Her laughter cut through the estate's formality, a reminder of why he was here. The visor's glow reflected in her violet eyes, a testament to their shared victory. In a quiet moment, Ethan's thoughts drifted. War had shaped him, its losses carving deep scars. His squad, gone in a single blast on a distant moon. He'd built the visor to give Arya what he couldn't give them, a second chance. Standing in this alien court, he felt unworthy of the honor, a soldier out of place among nobles. But Arya's courage, her steady steps despite her blindness, drove him forward. He'd protect her sight, no matter the cost. Lady Seraphine appeared, her silver hair catching the light of Nexara's twin suns streaming through a window. She led Ethan to the estate's gardens, where crystal blooms pulsed with faint energy. Her elegance steadied his nerves as they walked, her voice soft but firm. Arya's bravery comes from you, she said, her violet eyes meeting his. She trusts you completely. Ethan nodded, his gruff exterior softening. They spoke of Nexara's fragile peace, of rival houses circling like predators. Seraphine's words carried a widow's strength, her hope for Arya a quiet fire. The estate buzzed with preparations for the grand ceremony. Servants polished the crystal great hall, its surfaces reflecting the twin moon's glow. Ethan learned the event would be broadcast across 12 star systems, a stage for House Valebright's prestige. The scale unsettled him, but he focused on the visor, tweaking its settings at a borrowed console. Its signals needed to hold steady under the ceremony's scrutiny. Arya practiced her role nearby, walking a ceremonial path marked by glowing stones. Her steps were sure, but her small hands fidgeted, betraying nerves. Ethan knelt beside her. "You've got this, kid. Just follow the patterns." She smiled, gripping his hand. Steward Roland oversaw the preparations, his movements precise, his gaze cold. Ethan caught the steward's glances, laced with subtle disdain, like a blade hidden in silk. Roland's loyalty to House Valebright seemed absolute, yet something in his posture felt off. Ethan kept his observations silent, his soldier's instincts cataloging every detail. The ceremony loomed, a test not just for Arya but for him. Seraphine joined Ethan later, her expression shadowed. They stood by a crystal fountain, its hum blending with the garden's quiet. "Rival houses watch us closely," she confided, her voice low. "Lord Malric Blackthorn most of all. His ambition knows no bounds." Ethan's jaw tightened. He knew men like Blackthorn from the war, power-hungry, ruthless. "He'd want the visor," Ethan said, his mind already tracing threats. Seraphine nodded, her eyes searching his. "We must be vigilant," Arya called out, breaking the tension. "Ethan, look. The path glows brighter now." She walked it again, her visor translating the stone's energy into vivid patterns. Ethan watched, pride swelling. Her innocence stood in stark contrast to the estate's undercurrents. He adjusted the visor's calibration, ensuring its stability. The device was more than tech now. It was Arya's strength, a symbol of their bond. As night fell, the twin moons rose, casting silver light across the gardens. Ethan stood alone for a moment, the weight of the ceremony pressing harder. He wasn't built for noble courts or grand stages. His world was circuits and solder, not speeches and robes. Yet Arya's trust, Seraphine's gratitude, pulled him forward. The workshop felt distant now, a memory of simpler days. Here, in this glittering estate, a larger fight brewed. He sensed it in Roland's cold stares, in Seraphine's warnings. Ethan checked the visor one last time. It's humming steadily. Whatever lay ahead, he'd face it with the same precision he brought to his repairs. The stage was set, and he wouldn't falter. The twin moons hung low, casting silver light through the estate's crystal windows. Ethan paced a guest chamber, the ceremonial robes discarded on a chair. Sleep eluded him, his soldier's instincts sharp. Earlier, he'd overheard Steward Roland in a shadowed corridor, his voice a hushed murmur through a hidden comm device. The words were unclear, but the tone carried secrecy, a cadence Ethan knew from covert ops. Suspicion gnawed at him. He sat at a console, tracing the comm signal. Encrypted static hissed back, unyielding. His fingers tapped the keys, frustration rising. Something was wrong, but the proof slipped through his grasp. In the great hall, a young servant named Lyra swept the polished floors, her movements quick under Roland's watchful eye. She paused near a wall panel, her breath catching as she saw the steward slip a small device into a crevice. Its faint glow pulsed once before fading. Her heart raced, fear rooting her in place. Roland's gaze swept past, oblivious to her observation, but Lyra's hands trembled as she resumed sweeping. The device's purpose was unknown, but its secrecy screamed danger. She kept her head down, vowing to stay silent, her loyalty to House Valebright warring with her dread. Ethan sought out Lady Seraphine at dawn, finding her in a quiet study lined with holographic star charts. Her silver hair was pinned loosely, her violet eyes sharp with concern. He shared his unease about Roland's late-night murmurs, keeping his voice low. "Blackthorn's spies have long coveted your tech," Seraphine warned, her tone steady but heavy. "The visor's a prize they'd kill for." Ethan nodded, his mind mapping threats like a battlefield. Blackthorn's ambition felt like the shadow of old wars, where power trumped honor. "I'll keep watch," he promised, his resolve hardening. Arya, unaware of the tension, practiced her speech in the garden. Her small voice carried gratitude for Ethan, each word bright with sincerity. The Luma Visor gleamed, its nodes translating the crystal bloom's heat into patterns. Ethan watched from a distance, her innocence a stark contrast to the storm brewing in his gut. He inspected the visor again, its circuits clean, its signals steady. As a precaution, he wired a manual override switch into its frame, a soldier's habit to counter unseen threats. "Just in case," he muttered, testing the toggle. It clicked smoothly, a small reassurance. That evening, Archon Cassian hosted a pre-ceremony dinner in a vaulted hall. Crystal chandeliers cast prisms across the table, where nobles from across Nexara sat. Lord Malric Blackthorn arrived, his presence chilling the air. Tall and lean, his dark robes absorbed the light, and his smile was a predator's mask. He raised a glass to Ethan, his voice smooth. "A remarkable invention, Cole. The Visor's ingenuity could reshape worlds." The praise dripped with intent, probing for weaknesses. Ethan met his gaze, his soldier's bluntness cutting through. "It's for Arya, that's all." Malric's eyes narrowed, a flicker of calculation. Seraphine deflected Malric's questions with diplomatic grace, her words weaving around his probes like a shield. "The Visor serves House Valebright's future," she said, her tone firm yet polite. Ethan watched her, impressed by her poise. She was a strategist in her own right, guarding him from Malric's scrutiny. The noble's smile tightened, his fingers drumming lightly on the table. Ethan's instincts screamed. Blackthorn was no bystander. He was a player in a larger game. As the dinner ended, guests dispersed into the moonlit halls. Ethan lingered, his gaze tracking Roland. The steward moved with purpose, checking panels and whispering to aides. His efficiency was flawless, but Ethan caught another cold glance, a blade's edge in the steward's eyes. Suspicion deepened, a puzzle missing its final piece. Ethan returned to his chamber, the twin moons now high, their light stark against Nexara's plains. Lying on the narrow bed, Ethan's mind churned. Roland's secrecy, Malric's probing, Seraphine's warnings, they wove a web of danger. The ceremony loomed, its broadcast to 12 star systems amplifying the stakes. The Visor was more than tech. It was a beacon, drawing eyes and ambition. Ethan checked his handheld scanner, its screen showing the Visor's stable signals. He thought of Arya, her trust absolute. Sabotage felt closer now, a shadow creeping toward the light. He gripped the override switch's blueprint, its design etched in his mind. Whatever Roland or Blackthorn planned, he'd be ready. The moon sank lower, and Ethan stayed awake, his soldier's vigilance unbroken. Nexara's twin moons bathed the crystal great hall in silver light, their glow refracting through towering panes. The hall buzzed with nobles from across the sector, their robes shimmering like distant nebulae. Ethan stood at the edge of the dais, his ceremonial attire stiff against his broad frame. The weight of eyes pressed on him, a scrutiny he hadn't felt since battlefield briefings. Beside him, Arya shone in a silver dress, the Luma Visor gleaming like a crown. Its nodes pulsed faintly, translating the hall's energy into patterns only she could perceive. Her small hand brushed his, steadying his nerves. Archon Cassian Vale stepped forward, his silver robes flowing as he addressed the assembly. His voice carried authority, resonating off the crystal walls. "Tonight, we honor compassion and ingenuity. Ethan Cole, a human, has restored sight to one of our own." The crowd stirred, their murmurs a mix of awe and skepticism. Ethan kept his gaze forward, his soldier's discipline holding firm. Arya stood taller, her presence quiet but commanding, a child defying the weight of tradition. The council, seated in elevated rows, watched closely. Their thoughts churned silently. Was this outsider a savior or a threat to Nerevian ways? Some leaned forward, intrigued by the Visor's potential. Others sat rigid, bound to old laws. Their silent debate hung heavy, a counterpoint to Cassian's praise. Ethan sensed their scrutiny, but focused on Arya. Her courage, not his, was the heart of this moment. The ceremony reached its peak as Arya stepped onto a glowing path, its stones pulsing with energy. The Visor translated each pulse into vibrant patterns, guiding her steps. She moved with grace, her small frame unwavering despite the eyes of 12-star systems watching via broadcast. Ethan's chest swelled with pride, his doubts drowned by her strength. The hall's chandeliers flickered, casting prisms that danced across her silver dress. For a moment, all seemed perfect. Then the Visor stuttered. Its nodes flared erratically, emitting sharp pulses that prickled Ethan's skin. Alarms blared from the estate's defense grid, their wail cutting through the hall. The crowd gasped, nobles rising from their seats. Arya froze, her hands clutching the Visor as it hummed wildly. Ethan's heart pounded. He recognized the signs, a remote hack, turning the Visor into a weapon. His soldier's mind snapped into focus, mapping the threat. The hall's security gates groaned, their locks disengaging, exposing Valebright's core systems. Ethan leapt to Arya's side, his voice steady despite the chaos. "Hold on, kid. I've got you." She nodded, trembling but trusting, her grip tightening on his arm. The Visor's pulses surged, threatening to overload its neural link. Ethan scanned the crowd, spotting Roland's icy composure and Malrake Blackthorn's too calm demeanor. Suspicion hardened into certainty. This was no accident. It was sabotage, time for maximum exposure. The glowing path flickered as the defense grid's hum grew louder. Nobles whispered, their panic rising. Ethan knelt beside Arya, shielding her from the crowd's gaze. His fingers brushed the Visor's override switch, a precaution now proving vital. "Stay calm," he murmured, his voice a low anchor. Arya's breathing steadied, her courage a mirror to his own. He pulled a handheld device from his pocket, its screen glowing with code. The hack's signal was strong, but he could fight it. Cassian's voice boomed, demanding order, but the alarms drowned him out. Seraphine appeared at Ethan's side, her violet eyes wide with fear, but sharp with resolve. "Can you stop it?" Ethan nodded, already working. "It's a remote takeover. I'll block it." His fingers moved with practiced speed, connecting the device to the Visor's port. The crowd's murmurs grew, a tide of uncertainty, but Ethan tuned them out. His world narrowed to the Visor, Arya, and the code. The great hall's crystal walls vibrated, reflecting the moon's light in chaotic patterns. Ethan's device hummed, countering the hack's pulses. He glanced at Arya, her face pale but determined. "You're doing great," he said, his voice warm despite the tension. She managed a small smile, her trust unwavering. The defense grid's alarms wavered, a sign his countermeasures were working. But the hack's source remained hidden, a shadow within the hall. Ethan's mind raced, piecing together Roland's secrecy, Malric's probing. The answer was close, and he'd find it. The ceremony meant for triumph had become a battlefield, and Ethan was ready to fight. Ethan's fingers flew across the handheld device, its screen casting a faint glow in the chaotic great hall. The Lumavisor's erratic pulses surged, threatening to overwhelm Arya's neural link. She stood frozen on the glowing path, her small hands clutching the Visor, trembling but resolute. Ethan's voice cut through the alarms, low and steady. "Hold tight, kid. We're fixing this." Her nod was slight, her trust in him a lifeline. The crystal walls vibrated, reflecting Nexara's twin moons in fractured patterns, as the estate's defense grid groaned under the hack's assault. He plugged the device into the Visor's port, code streaming across the screen. The hack was sophisticated, rerouting the Visor's signals to unlock Valebright's security gates. Ethan's soldier's mind mapped the attack. Remote, precise, malicious. His override switch hummed, buying time, but the pulses intensified, a digital storm. Arya's breathing hitched, her pale blue face tight with effort. "It's loud," she whispered, the Visor's feedback overwhelming. Ethan gripped her shoulder. "Focus on me. You're stronger than this." The hall's ceremonial music, drums and horns pulsing at 120 beats per minute, blared on, a chaotic backdrop. Ethan's eyes lit with an idea. He recalibrated his device, using the music's rhythm to generate interference. The drum's low thrum and horn's sharp notes became a weapon, jamming the hack's control channel. The Visor's pulses stuttered, weakening. Arya steadied, her grip on his arm tightening. The crowd's panic swelled. Nobles clutching robes, their whispers a tide of fear. Ethan blocked them out. His world narrowed to code and courage. Across the hall, Lord Malric Blackthorn stood among the nobles, his cold smile gone. His eyes, sharp with fury, betrayed his role as the hack faltered. His allies, scattered in the crowd, signaled retreat, their gestures subtle but desperate. Ethan caught the movement. His suspicion was confirmed. Malric was no bystander. He was the orchestrator. But the signal's source was closer, hidden within the hall's crystal walls. Ethan's device pinged, tracing the hack to a concealed panel. A device planted earlier pulsed faintly, its signal linked to Roland. The steward stood near Cassian, his icy composure cracking as Ethan's reverse signal exposed the betrayal. Roland's gaze darted, seeking an exit. Cassian's guards, loyal and alert, moved to block his path, their armored forms closing in. The steward's hands twitched, his facade crumbling under the weight of exposure. Ethan stabilized the visor, its nodes settling into a steady hum. Arya's sight returned, the hall's patterns clear again. She squeezed his hand, her voice soft but firm. "You did it." Ethan exhaled, relief sharp but fleeting. He turned to the console, broadcasting the trace signal to the council's screens. Lines of code pointed directly to House Blackthorn, undeniable proof. The nobles gasped, their murmurs turning to outrage. Malric's face paled, his arrogance replaced by desperation. Cassian stepped forward, his voice a thunderclap. "Seize Roland." The guards moved swiftly, pinning the steward as he struggled, his icy restraint gone. Ethan faced the council, his voice steady despite the chaos. The hack came from Blackthorn, through Roland. They turned the visor into a key. The screens glowed, showing the signal's path, a digital trail of betrayal. Malric opened his mouth to protest, but the council's fury drowned him out, their voices rising in condemnation. Arya stepped forward, her silver dress catching the moonlight. The visor gleamed, a symbol of her resilience. "Ethan saved me again," she said, her voice clear, cutting through the hall's tension. The nobles fell silent, her words carrying a child's truth. Ethan knelt beside her, pride and relief mixing in his chest. The visor meant to restore her world had nearly destroyed Valebright's. His quick thinking, her courage had turned the tide. Seraphine approached, her violet eyes blazing with resolve. She addressed the council, her voice steady. This betrayal came from within and beyond. Ethan Cole stopped it. Her gaze met his, gratitude unspoken but deep. The hall's alarms faded, the defense grid stabilizing. Ethan stood, his device still warm in his hand. The battle was won, but the war wasn't over. Malric's disgrace loomed, and Roland's treachery was exposed. The ceremony meant for honor had become a crucible, forging Ethan's place among them. He glanced at Arya, her visor glowing softly. The fight had been for her, and that was enough. Archon Cassian Vale's command sliced through the lingering alarms, his voice a blade of authority. "Arrest Roland, now!" The guards surged forward, their armored grips closing on the steward. Roland's icy facade shattered. his sharp features twisting in panic as he struggled. "This is a mistake," he snarled, his polished restraint crumbling into desperation. The guards dragged him away, his boots scraping the crystal floor, his betrayal laid bare for all to see. The hall's nobles watched in stunned silence, the air thick with the weight of exposed treachery. Ethan rose from beside Arya, his handheld device still glowing with the traced signal data. He projected the evidence onto the hall's central screen, lines of code illuminating Blackthorn's involvement. "The hack originated from House Blackthorn," Ethan said, his voice steady, carrying the blunt edge of a soldier's report. The assembly leaned forward, their murmurs growing as the digital trail unfolded, irrefutable. Malric Blackthorn stood rigid, his cold smile erased, cornered like a predator in a trap. Malric raised his hands, his voice smooth but strained. "This is fabricated, a Valebright ploy to discredit rivals." He gestured to the council, seeking allies, but their outrage swelled, drowning his words in a wave of condemnation. Nobles from distant systems shook their heads, their whispers turning to shouts. "Traitor! Disgrace!" Malric's composure faltered, his lean frame tensing as the tide turned against him. Ethan watched, his satisfaction quiet, knowing the data spoke louder than any accusation. Lady Seraphine stepped into the light, her silver hair catching the twin moon's glow. Her voice rang clear, steady as crystal. "Blackthorn's betrayal strikes at our core, but Ethan Cole's loyalty saved us." She condemned Malric's schemes with precise words, praising Ethan's quick thinking. The council nodded, her grace commanding respect. In her mind, relief washed over her, mingled with a growing affection for Ethan. He was more than a protector now, a man who bridged her world's divides, his compassion a quiet strength she hadn't expected. She saw potential in his scarred hands, a future beyond this night. Cassian raised a hand, silencing the hall. "Ethan Cole is a hero," he declared, his tone final. "I propose the title of Valebright Warden, a rare honor for an outsider, protector and friend to our house." The words hung, a bridge between human and Nerevian ways. Ethan blinked, the offer catching him off guard. Warden. It carried weight, tying him to this glittering estate, far from his dusty workshop. The crowd erupted in applause, nobles from 12 star systems rising to acknowledge his ingenuity and heart. Their cheers echoed off the crystal walls, the broadcast carrying the moment across Nexara and beyond. Ethan stood amid the clamor, overwhelmed, his soldier's reserve cracking under the praise. Arya hugged him tightly, her small arms wrapping around his waist. The Visor glowed softly, its nodes pulsing in rhythm with her joy, a symbol of their unbreakable bond. "You're staying, right?" she whispered, her voice bright. Ethan ruffled her violet hair, nodding. "Yeah, kid. Looks like it." Guards escorted Malric out, his dark robes trailing like shadows. His house disgraced, his ambitions in ruins. He cast a final glare at Ethan, venom in his eyes. The council murmured of consequences, alliances shifting in the wake of betrayal. Ethan watched him go, a chapter closing, but vigilance lingered in his gut. Blackthorn's fall was swift, but rivals like him rarely vanished quietly. Ethan turned to Cassian, his voice gruff but sincere. "I accept the title." He vowed silently to protect Arya and House Valebright, his purpose renewed. The hall's energy shifted, triumph replacing chaos. Seraphine approached, her violet eyes meeting his with warmth. "You've earned this," she said softly, her hand brushing his arm. Ethan felt the pull, a quiet affection mirroring her own. The ceremony, salvaged from sabotage, now sealed his place among them. Arya tugged his sleeve, pointing to the glowing path. "Can we walk it together now?" Ethan chuckled, offering his arm. They stepped forward, the Visor guiding her, his presence her anchor. The nobles watched, their applause fading into respectful quiet. Cassian joined Seraphine, his stern features softened. "A new era for Valebright," he murmured. The twin moons watched over the hall, their light steady as bonds forged in crisis strengthened. Ethan glanced at the stars beyond the crystal panes, his workshop a distant memory. Here, in this nexus of intrigue and loyalty, he'd found a new front to guard. The night deepened, but hope burned brighter. Days later, under Nexara's twin suns, Ethan walked the estate's gardens with Lady Seraphine. The crystal blooms pulsed faintly, their heat signatures a gentle hum through the air. Seraphine's silver hair caught the warm light, her steps graceful beside his. Ethan's new robes, simpler than ceremonial garb, felt less foreign now. The title of Valebright Warden settled on him like a well-fitted harness, a role blending his soldier's edge with this glittering world. They spoke quietly, her voice weaving thoughts of Nexara's future, alliances mending after Blackthorn's fall. Aurea ran ahead, her silver dress fluttering as she chased patterns only the Visor revealed. Flowers bloomed in her perception as warm bursts, their petals heat drawing her laughter. "Look, Ethan, this one's like a star." She paused, tilting her head, the visor glowing softly. Ethan smiled, his chest light with her joy. The accident at the monolith felt distant now, a shadow eclipsed by her resilience. Seraphine watched her daughter, her violet eyes soft. "She thrives because of you," she murmured, her hand brushing his arm, a touch that lingered. Their conversation deepened, trust flowering into quiet affection. Seraphine shared visions of unity among Nexara's houses, her widow's strength guiding her words. Ethan nodded, his gruff tone softening. "Blackthorn's gone, but others might rise. We'll be ready." His mind traced tactical lines, the estate's defenses now under his watchful eye. Seraphine's gaze met his, unspoken promise in her eyes. "Together," she said, her voice warm. Ethan felt the pull, a bond beyond gratitude, stirring embers he'd thought long cooled. Archon Cassian joined them, his broad frame casting a shadow across the path. His stern features eased as he greeted Ethan. "Warden Cole, the role suits you." He offered a permanent position as Valebright's tech advisor, his voice carrying respect. Ethan hesitated, his workshop on the border plains calling like an old friend. Dusty benches, salvage tech, simpler times, but Arya's laughter echoed ahead, her steps sure with the visor. "I'll stay," Ethan said, his decision firm. "For her, for all of you." Cassian clasped his shoulder, a nod sealing the pact. The Visor's design spread across Nexara, shared under strict safeguards. Medbays adopted the tech, restoring sight to those who had lost it in accidents or conflicts. Ethan oversaw the protocols, his military precision ensuring no repeats of the hack. The device became a symbol, bridging human ingenuity and Nerevian tradition. Seraphine smiled at the reports, her hand on Ethan's. "Your compassion reshapes destinies," she said, her words echoing the theme that bound them. In a quiet corner of the estate, a young Nerevian engineer named Kira sketched her own inventions, inspired by Ethan's story. Her pale blue hands moved swiftly across a holographic pad, ideas flowing from the visor's triumph. She dreamed of change, of tech that healed divides. Her thoughts churned with possibility, a ripple from the ceremony's waves. Kira glanced toward the gardens, where Ethan walked, her admiration silent but deep. His actions sparked her ambition, a new generation stirring. Seraphine turned to Ethan, her violet eyes meeting his with depth. "Thank you," she said, her voice soft, carrying layers of gratitude and hope. He held her gaze, the twin suns warming the air between them. "Couldn't have done it without you," he replied, his words simple but true. Their bond, forged in crisis, now bloomed in peace, a quiet promise of more. The estate is being prepared for a new festival, celebrating unity and innovation. Servants hung banners, their movements lively, Arya at the heart of plans. She darted about, suggesting games that tested the visor's limits, her energy infectious. Ethan watched, his place secure. The workshop's isolation faded, replaced by this nexus of family and duty. Ethan looked to the horizon, Nexara's rocky plains stretching under the binary glare. The silver cloud monolith loomed distant, a relic of the past. His compassion had reshaped a world's destiny, bridging cultural rifts and turning tech into salvation. The twin suns dipped lower, casting long shadows, but the light within the gardens held strong. Bonds strengthened, futures aligned. In this new dawn, Ethan found home, his oath to Valebright etched in every step.